UNDP. My name's Elijah. I was the project manager on this project. It was amazing. 8 weeks with 50 collaborators from around the world, trying to come together to build an amazing tool to solve a very unique problem in regards to the digital divide. So I'm going to give it to Robert so that he can begin the presentation to present our findings, where we made progress and where there's still gaps to close. Robert, take it away.
First we're going to turn it over to Joe.
Okay.
Joe would like to
say something. Okay, sure.
Hi, Joe. I'll just introduce myself first. I'm Laura Clark-Murray. I'm head of projects for Omdena. I just want to thank everyone here for joining. First, I want to thank and congratulate the collaborators on the superb work that you did. And I also want to thank Joe Wheeler and the UNDP team for giving us the opportunity to do such good work, and also for your engagement throughout the process. So over to you, Joe. Thanks, Elijah and Laura. But before we get started, I just want to say a huge thank you to the Omdena team, because throughout the 8-week process, it's really been a pleasure to work with everybody. And just so you guys have a sense of who's on the line, so we are the Chief Digital Office at UNDP. I think there's about 14 of us on the line and a couple more joining at 15 past. And we're kind of tasked with the digital transformation of the organization. So the research that you've done will be really insightful in guiding some of the work that we're doing. And yeah, it's really a pleasure to have you here presenting today. So with that, I will pass off to Robert to start the presentation. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. All right. There. Okay. Oops. There we go. Okay. Beg your pardon. Putting it in screen mode made my speaker's notes disappear. Let's try it in this order. Thank you for your patience, and welcome to this presentation of results for the Omdena UNDP Analyzing the Digital Divide Challenge.
Robert, I'm so sorry to interrupt.
The massive block showing like a speaker notes and presenter notes, that's blocking the actual slide. Okay, that's out.
Oh, no kidding. Okay. Yeah.
Now you're good. Now you're not.
Okay. When we tried this earlier, the presenter screen was not visible to anyone else, and this is where all my notes are. Hold on just a moment while I figure out how to make this work. Oh, Elijah, don't you wish we tested it on Zoom?
It's okay if you can just minimize and just go based on the slide, and then you can see your notes.
That's what we're going to have to do. All right. Okay. Oh, I guess I should pull it to the other side here. Oh boy. All right. The problem statement touches on many issues, including access as a right, estimated costs, and the impact of COVID-19. However, the end goal as stated here is clear. Our mission in support of this goal is a data-driven understanding of the relationship between access, or lack of it, and human development. This is how we rephrased the core of the project. With that focus in mind, it was clear that we wanted to start with country-level data and HDI as target. And I do apologize. Answering this question involves a sequence of logical elements that will establish how manipulating internet access will impact HDI. First is the confirmation that a correlation between internet access and HDI actually exists. Next, the group had to understand what access to digital services encompassed in order to conceive of ways of quantifying it. Possible contributors to differing access were brainstormed, and some 14 different ways of understanding divisions in digital connectivity. Ultimately, these 6 were found to be worth pursuing within the 8 weeks. The operating definition of the age divide for this group was internet access, connectivity, and usage differences between age groups. 2 methods were considered in attempting to connect the age divide to HDI. Is the overall age divide trend different between developed and developing countries? And is the age divide trend in social media use different between developed and developing countries? Age-based data could be found from the Pew Research Group. 3 age categories from the data were selected for analysis. The project suffered from significant weaknesses in the available data. Even the data set used here had to be assembled from various individual articles. Almost every country covered is in the developed category. The 3 age categories for both total access and social media use were compared to HDI. And the hope was that any clear relationship found between age group differences in human development could be extended to other countries by cross-correlating with aggregated usage features found in the Network Readiness Index, although the years covered in the data don't overlap. All data agree that in every country, younger groups access digital resources at a higher rate than older groups. Unfortunately, from this analysis, no correlation can be elicited between age differences in digital access and human development. Continuing to pursue age as a significant fault line in digital access faces many obstacles. Existing use by age data can be found for other countries. The existing use by age data that can be found for other countries, unfortunately, uses different age groupings. Perhaps most significant is the long-term implication of shifting demographics. Although the proportion of older adults is increasing, with each year, more digitally savvy younger people move into the category. This could be a problem that outgrows itself. In considering the relationship between HDI and access limitations caused by disability, this team also sought to use both country and region data to detect correlation. All data for this model is from the DARE Index, a product of the Global Initiative for Inclusive ICTs, promoting digital rights for persons with disabilities. The inclusion of region in the data set allows for aggregation by geography. A linear regression approach to the data set suffered from low correlation and high error. Making the argument that HDI improves with closing the disability access gap will require a different approach or different data. However, new approaches can be explored with the Power BI-based dashboard built by the team. A screenshot is shown here, and the file will be available for your use. The 2019 GCI data set allowed the education group to work with 90, am I on the right group? No, I skipped one. There we go. Thank you. This team pursued the differences in digital literacy and digital device skills to elicit the relationship between connectivity and human development. Many ways of thinking about education were investigated. Formal digital skills might be captured through institution attendance or graduation rates, while informal skills could be assessed by web statistics for how-to sites and help forums. Neither approach could be implemented within the scope of this project, however. General education as a proxy is problematic in light of its role as a component of HDI itself. The team did use government spending on education generally to begin exploratory analysis of costs to improve digital literacy and skills. The most complete measure available is the World Economic Forum Global Competitive Index, a survey of self-assessed digital skills. Two machine learning approaches were applied, both showing clear correlation between digital skills and HDI. For digital skills and literacy, the null argument can be rejected as it does correlate with HDI. The team found several outlier countries where high human development index failed to equate to high GCI scores. This unexpected result was considered to be an indicator of the weakness of skills self-assessment. The graphic here shows, for example, Japan with an absurdly low digital skills rating below that of Egypt, Indonesia, or Kenya. The digital skills measure found in the Eurostat suite of statistics is more objective, but would need to be applied to other regions that include developing countries. The team's approach to differing access by gender considered how to measure access by country, the correlation of gender access in human development, and ways to relate that information directly to the gender component of HDI. They hope to build a data set that could be visualized and demonstrate correlation, as well as identify costs and methods of minimizing the divide. The value of data over time was recognized early, but could not be significantly leveraged for this project. The data used to connect gender access differences and human development drew from the International Telecommunications Union report, the Inclusive Internet Index, and the Global Competitive Index, or TC360. Relatively few, mostly developed countries could be included. 4 final most relevant features were included in the final model, which showed healthy correlation and modest error. The null hypothesis can be rejected, as differences in gender access to digital services do correlate to human development. The fundamental goal here was to understand the relationship between electronic government access and HDI. No one measure neatly defines digitalization of public services, let alone captures it in a simple number. The EGDI is a composite provision of online services, telecommunication connectivity, and human capacity, which, quote, reflects how a country is using information technologies to promote access and inclusion of its people, unquote. The team was encouraged as they worked with the EGDI that this data would correlate to Human Development Index. This is one of the largest data sets in terms of number of countries. The E-Government Development Index, International Telecommunications Union Annual Survey, which collates mobile and internet utilization statistics, and the target indicator were combined. Although HDI has yearly figures, EGDI does not have data for each year. In fact, only about half the years in the range of the data set were actual and the rest were imputed. However, only the latest actual data is used to power the model in the interactive application. The model with the best balance of correlation and error rate related HDI to both EGDI and the Telecommunication Infrastructure Index. For e-government, the null argument can be rejected as it does correlate with HDI. Interpretation of the model is complicated, however, by one component, the Telecommunications Infrastructure Index, also being a component of the e-government development index itself. This graphic by the team illustrates the data set another way using the Democracy Index developed by the intelligence unit at The Economist magazine, and suggests that there are trends over time to be explored. Restriction in this context refers to uniform limitations to internet access throughout a country. The team separated restrictions into infrastructure, such as download speed, electricity access, and bandwidth capacity, and imposed restrictions, which are measures of censorship. Relevant data was sourced and models built for both types of restrictions. 32 useful features were found in The Economist magazine's Inclusive Internet Index, largely objective measures. Censorship data came from the Freedom House and their Internet Freedom Scores. The Inclusive Internet Index provides 2020 data for 100 countries shown in the map to the right. 4 key features were ultimately selected. The Internet Freedom Scores lists 65 countries, also for 2020. From 21 available features, 4 were identified as most impactful. Whether one considers countrywide restrictions to digital access in the context of technical limitations or censorship, the null hypothesis can be rejected, as both relate to the Human Development Index. Again, the presence of outliers indicate that the data set used here doesn't tell the whole story. The graphic at right generated by the team demonstrates high HDI countries with relatively low Internet Freedom Score. In order to make use of these findings, one of our team members has used a Streamlit-based locally hosted web application to create an interactive tool where the models that showed correlation can be explored. Among other things, you can see the current statistics for the country, the error rates of the model, and you can adjust sliders to narrow a country's gaps and see, according to the model in its current form, how that might impact HDI. Let me show you now a short video of what that looks like. Here's the home screen with an explanation of what's going on. And on the left, you can choose different types of digital divide subjects, individual countries to be analyzed, adjust the sliders that control their gap features, and see the result in terms of how that might potentially impact HDI on a rudimentary scale. This will be part of a suite of deliverables that also includes all the models, code, and README docs, the Power BI exploration tool of access gaps due to disability, a written document summarizing all resources used, a brief report on ideal data to look for moving forward, and this presentation. I want to thank the team, almost all of whom did double, triple, or quadruple duty. people who were team leaders also did grunt work in other areas, and there was many all-stars. Thank you very much for your time.
Awesome work, Robert. Does anyone have any questions that they wanted to ask about the presentation or about the progress, or any questions about maybe what next steps are in regards to this project? Okay.
I had a bunch of questions, but you answered all of them during the presentation. So.
Awesome.
All right, a win.
Robert, thank you for the presentation. This is Gayan from the Chief Digital Office of UNDP. The data sources that you mentioned, the different data sources that you used, they are all publicly available data, or did you have to do very specific surveys for this presentation?
Indeed. In fact, all the data was publicly available, but in certain cases, the data sets that were used in the final version of the model were the realization of a lot of perhaps merging of different data sets and other types of pre-processing that wouldn't be immediately found online.
I do want to add that I believe for the restrictions pillar that Ahmed was had to reach out to an organization called Censored Planet, and they were just willing to give out the data, but we had to go through that process of asking them for the data. So that was the only one that there was some barrier, but again, it was simply just asking them, explaining the situation, and they were good to go. Any other questions?
Yeah, hi Elijah and Robert. Thank you so much for this presentation. It's Sam here from the CDO as well. It's quite interesting at the start. I was kind of hearing that there are a lot of different, obviously, weaknesses in the data in terms of your ability to draw kind of firm conclusions. And then I noticed at the end what looks like a really fascinating that local host model that you were just playing the video of. In terms of what kind of conclusions you can draw from that, and just kind of looping it back to some of the weaknesses in the data that you were mentioning at the start, were there any, because there were quite a lot of interesting lines of inquiry, I guess, as you were presenting, were there any key insights that you would be able to summarize at the high level where you felt like, based on the strength of the data, you could kind of suggest A, B, and C as possible areas to investigate further?
Well, briefly, I could say that one of the common weaknesses that I didn't elicit in the presentation was the presence of correlating factors between the various approaches. So none of the models, or not all of the models, are completely independent for each other. Many of them draw from the same data sets for part of what creates the model. And so what that does to strengthen or weaken the approach, I'm not sure, but I thought it was worth mentioning. Certainly in terms of the long-term goal, can we use closing the digital divide in a practical way to improve HDI and therefore stimulate investment in these areas? The first step was to demonstrate that there was in fact a correlation between the digital divide and HDI. And at least in these particular areas, we've been able to show that that definitely exists. And that gives you an opportunity to think about how you want to establish causality, which levers you might want to pull, and how much it's going to cost to pull those levers.
Cool. Maybe just a short follow-up question, because I don't want to hog the stage to everyone else. How did you, I might have missed it, how did you define connectivity? Like, what were the elements of that and what kind of data sources you use to quantify that?
Well, I think that may be one of the weaknesses in that connectivity was the definition of connectivity was subject to existing data that we could find. So, for instance, in the age analysis, the data that we were able to get without creating our own original or surveyed data. Sorry, I started to answer the question and I lost track of what you were asking. Could you please repeat the question?
I was just trying to understand how you defined connectivity, whether it was purely the actual, like ITU data on how widespread physical connectivity was. I think the age data starts to kind of hint on capacity, obviously, as well. Like, was there a definition you used essentially just around connectivity and related data sources, I guess, as part of that definition?
Yes, and actually, I can tell you that in almost all the models, a number of associated connectivity features, such as distribution of 4G versus 5G, number of subscribers. There are actually dozens, if not hundreds, of different separate measures of connectivity, some of which contributed more to the models than others. And so the definition of connectivity, if it breaks down to the use of those individual features, is going to differ quite a bit from model to model.
Yeah, I hope you don't mind me also adding something to that. There's also among all the models, there's one specific model that focuses directly on the topic of connectivity, and so the model that deals with restrictions focuses directly on the access of internet among each country. So the percentage of the population that has access to internet. So that's one way in which you could say that we've defined connectivity, and the other models kind of also take their own approaches in it. But so yeah, they take their own approaches in it, but also define other factors that don't necessarily have to be they are connected to the internet, but also important factors that are pretty much important in terms of the digital context.
Just to make a quick introduction, that is the task manager for the restrictions task, and did the great work in reaching out to Centered Planet and getting a lot of data actually on technical limitations and infrastructure limitations in regards to technology and censorship in regards to technology and digital access. Samuel, does that answer your question, or do you have any add-ons to that?
Yeah, I think it does. It'd be good just to, I guess, the devil was always in the detail when we start exploring the different kind of data sets, but there's not a nice kind of clean answer to it. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, I guess that's one of the questions that we're exploring ourselves, is how do we better define qualitatively and quantitatively, I think, connectivity, right? So there's obviously 5G, 3G, whatever G, and then there's the kind of softer factors around what that means. So I was just really interested to see what kind of data sources you've been able to draw on.
Awesome. Any other questions from any member of the UNDP team?
Hi, this is Yolanda here. I'm from CDO team. I'm curious to see the interactive tool that Robert you shared, and one question, well, there are two questions relating to that. One is how easy or difficult it'll be to update that for future use. I assume you already have a backend where you store all the raw data, and now that you already put together all the data, I think it'll be very useful and handy if we can just update the data on an annual basis. I don't know if that's the plan or it's something to be discussed. And then the second related question is if there has already been a discussion about making that platform or tool into but building on what Sam mentioned earlier as a digital public good to make it more publicly available. Over.
So I maybe can help answer that in the sense of yeah. So that app is something that I believe should be able to get updated. Ellie, I noticed that you're here. Would you be willing to maybe add on to that? Ellie?
Oh, yes. Actually, I can, if possible, I can share my screen.
Let's see. Michael, can you give Ellie co-host rights, please?
Okay, Ellie, you should be able to share your screen now.
So can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, we can all see your screen.
So currently, I was able just to implement one of the models that our team worked on, which is the government digitalization. And well, there is the advantage with this data with this model was that the data was quite was well structured and there were no missing values. I have challenges with other models because of the, I mean, like Robert said, the data and the models weren't quite accurate and everything. And again, Streamlit I use Streamlit to develop this model, and yes, we can make it public available, but that will require a lot more coding, but it's possible eventually. With regards to new data, eventually that's possible. I try to, as much as possible, to implement in such a way that it's modular. All it's required right now is where you guys want to go with it, and I can make it, I mean, to your liking. Thanks.
Yolanda, does that answer your question, or do you have any other questions to add?
Yeah, thanks for the clarification. Now I get it. It's only kind of a testing interface for one of the indicators. When Robert was presenting, I thought it said all the different indicators has its different pages. So I was imagining more than this. But I think it's worth another discussion, even just within our team, to see what's the value in this.
To add to what Ellie is presenting, essentially for other tasks, there were roadblocks in regards to getting something that would give a good results, a good model. So that's why they're not part of the final this app mockup right now. But again, as we look at the data, the ideal data report, for example, and are able to get that ideal data, this is definitely possible for those other factors and other pillars of the digital divide that need to be analyzed as well. But does anyone have any other questions right now?
Just a real clarifying one of what we see on the screen here, just for my ignorance. Are we saying here that depending on the sliders on the left, if the e-government index was to increase or the infrastructure index was to increase, that model was just telling us what the anticipated HDI number will be?
That is correct. Yeah, right. That is correct. Okay. Yeah. I believe Ellie has some docs associated in the GitHub that can be used to understand really what's going on across the whole application.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And is it possible within like any one of those other indexes, let's say the e-government index, to be able to see which sub component can be increased and its ultimate kind of effect on the HDI? So rather than treating the index as one giant slider.
So I know that was something discussed. We were never able to get it into the final app, but it was something discussed that we just weren't able to get into the final app. But the data, I believe, and Ilika and maybe Meta was the task manager for this task, can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the way the data is structured, you can see which feature has more impact than others under the e-government index, and maybe show that and reflect that as well as a slider. But if Meta wants to add to that, she can definitely add to that. I know she's here.
Yeah, thanks, Elijah. Yeah, so I think the problem with the reason why we didn't use the individual components of EGDI itself was because we weren't able to, it wasn't as easily accessible as EGDI itself for all the countries. And like Robert mentioned, we were able to expand on the number of countries available just by leaving out things that we could try to add to it. So based on that, eventually, if all the data works out, that would be possible for sure. Yeah.
Awesome. Samuel, I hope that answered your question.
Cool. Yeah, definitely. Thank you. I think I know what you mean.
Awesome. Any other questions from any member of the UNDP team?
A couple of quick things. One, I was wondering if there's an ETA for the ideal data report. And then two, I was wondering about the licensing for some of the data that you had specifically requested and gotten access to, and whether we would have access to that data and whether we could use it publicly.
Yes, to start with the second question, all of the data the links are in the resource document, as well as the techniques used to prepare and create the final data sets are in the notebooks, and they're described in their READMEs. As to the first question about the ideal data report, that will be ready tomorrow.
Great, thanks.
Awesome. Any other questions? Okay.
I have a comment. This is Gayan once again from the CDO team. It's I don't know whether this is a question or a comment. Yeah, in UNDP, maybe this is a question for some of our UNDP colleagues as well. When we do a e-governance project or any digitalization or digitization project, do we have some preconditions for the country, or even some indicators in the project, like you need to have at least this percentage of connectivity before implementing any digital services in the government? Do we have a framework like that at all?
Okay, and that's exactly what I'm working on.
Perfect. Thanks, Mark.
Awesome. Okay. Okay, so it seems like that's those are the questions from UNDP. I hope that all the questions have been answered to your satisfaction. Again, all the presentation, the GitHub, all the data will be sent over to UNDP as soon as possible. And Laura, do you have any comments that you would like to add before we close today?
Since you sent it to me, I'll just say another thank you to everybody. Really appreciate the opportunity to do this good work, and we look forward to following up in the days ahead to get you everything that was mentioned here. So thank you on behalf of Omdena. We're very appreciative, and thank you to all the collaborators, and also to Elijah for his guidance of this team. Much appreciated.
Awesome work, everyone. Have a great day.
Oh, thank you from our side. It's really great work, and so many of the colleagues from your side joined this project. And I hope this is only a start of a longer and better collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Warm thanks and congratulations on the good work.
Awesome. So that's everything from us. Have a great day, everyone, and see you in Slack.
Thanks so much to the Omdena team for the great presentation, and I look forward to following up and reviewing all the material in more detail as well. Thank you so much.